guided meditation. See if you can feel into the sense of comfort and safety in the body and the senses, which expand the sense of our bodies through the visual and soundscape, expanded senses, and within that there's the natural rhythm of the breath, in breathing, out breathing. The body fills with the energy of the air. And sometimes you can feel it just moving throughout the limbs, into the head. It's such a natural starting place for being aware, being present, and feeling connected. And then feeling our hands from within the touch sensation of the hands, textures, contact, pressure, temperature, the warmth. Feeling metta, the metta kindness for our hands. Feeling the metta kindness for our feet. There's such sensors for our being, for being alive, the hands, our feet. And then feeling metta from within the sense of our heart, at the heart center. Kindness, tenderness, warmth. And notice how close and connected compassion is with metta already there in our body, in our hands, our feet, our heart, our bodies. That the care of compassion is there for whenever and wherever we hurt, where we feel pain, where and when we feel stress, anxiety, fear. And notice how intimately close the mudita, joy, for our goodness, our worthiness, our good fortune for sitting this retreat together, supporting each other, feeling supported. And how close the peace of equanimity, the balance, the stability, the center board of our being. a place within that is a refuge, a beacon for understanding the joys and sorrows that we and all beings experience. Abiding in this one mind, Brahmavihara mind. In the abiding, can you feel how naturally the connection and care of metta extends to all living beings, all living things? How effortlessly caring for pain, hurt, distress, just in the abiding, it is shared, it is extended. And the joy we may feel for our own fortune, worthiness, goodness, how naturally that can alight on the goodness of others, their capacity to feel their worthiness, express their goodness. And with this foundation of the Brahmavihara heart, recognizing our work of the last 4 days, 5 days, the degrees of release that comes when we attune and understand how grasping, holding on, attachment are painful. And in that understanding, there's release. In that moment, there's freedom from that attachment. There's a cessation of the cycle of holding on and the resulting contraction, dukkha, anxiety. At one point in my practice, it was clear that there's two clear paths that we walk. The path of transformation, the path of transcendence. Path of transformation is the work on ourselves to stay healthy, take care of ourselves physically, mentally, what we eat, the exercise we do, the various forms that engage us with the world and keep us feeling the stability and integration of our bodies and our sense of place where we are. In the 6 months that we've been doing this style of retreat, you all have mentioned many times how your relationship to your house or your room, your places of practice has changed. Just looking around or walking in meditation or doing the dishes, and you just notice things, and maybe the perception of the walls and floor and objects in your house, and how you work with them, how you either clean or leave things messy, or both. Some places messy, some places clean. You start to appreciate the great fortune that we have a sacred practice container wherever we are. Ultimately, it's our hearts. In the last half year, we've been learning to connect outside of the usual context of a retreat center, where together we weave a safe container, a safe space. So if things feel safe externally, we can internalize that sense of safety, which very directly feeds into how our practice opens and proceeds. So much of the work of transformation are the aspects of Dhamma practice that we're familiar with. And if we regard them in relation to our inner growth of trying to wake up every day and resolve to be a better person, it's those simple qualities, such as how the Buddha always began with generosity, dana, that was the basis, that was the foundation of them talking further about sila and the Brahma Viharas and the meditative mind becoming more refined with energy and concentration, and the degrees of wisdom that allow for the heart's purification. Our Brahmavihara practice develops to a point where those moments where we are the Brahmavihara, it's not something we take up and do, it's something we start to realize, because it so saturates our sense of being. Our thoughts at those times arise from metta, compassion, mudita, and the equipoise of equanimity, our speech. So important in developing this path of transformation, becoming a better person. The words that we speak are right, so powerful, so capable of hurt and harm, are so helpful in bringing our hearts to that fulfillment of feeling at home and fearlessness and harmlessness, where there's just no desire to cause harm, cause hurt to living things, the responsibility that we have for our things, our property. U Pandita would say the skill in having, how we have our possessions, how we hold them, how we get them, skill in having and skill in using. Is it an acquisition? Is it something that's supportive? Is it we use what we have generously? It's helpful for ourselves and others. becoming aware and practicing and developing the Brahma Viharas, we become that one heart, with four facets: kindness, caring, joy, stability, or equipoise. The self-transformation is the yoga we do, or the walks we take in nature, the movement of our body in the water, if we're able to swim, or Tai Chi, if whatever arts we practice that are helpful and keep us aware and keep us healthy and strong, or improve and sustain our health. Service is a form of self-transformation. Things that we volunteer for, the projects that we do, are a part of, that we contribute to. It was very meaningful for us how the Metta Dana project just grew out of our relationship to the monasteries in Burma and Upper Burma, the nunneries in the monasteries, and the village, the school for the village kids, and the hospital for care. It was such a natural extension out of the appreciation of the thousands of years that the nuns and monks, lay practitioners passed down lineages of this truth-bearing and liberating Dhamma. And we were the beneficiaries. We received this, and out of the gratitude grew that sense of service. So it might just be something we do in our homes, our immediate community, in our neighborhood, or on larger scales with helping organizations in the world that help others, help the environment. All this is by way of making us a better person every day, building a strong, healthy sense of ourselves, rooted in generosity, rooted in non-harming, rooted in the Brahma Viharas, rooting in our mindful speech and listening practices, in our service. The stronger our sense of a healthy self, the more selfless we are. By nature, not by wish, not by striving. And the more selfless we are, the more that just transitions naturally to the parallel path, the path of transcendence. Without the path of transcendence, the path of transformation could easily become largely self-referenced or self-centered, more about ourselves than about our selfless nature. But because the path of transcendence is entirely rooted in wisdom, that feeds into our work of transformation and makes our generosity more unconditional, purifies the Brahma Viharas in their maturity into completely unconditional love without any barriers or boundaries. Apramana, it's called, the boundless nature, or immeasurable nature of love, of care, empathetic joy. It's wondrous, mysterious, immeasurably boundless nature, the mudita, the joy we can feel filling our earth, our Milky Way. our universe. And how through that we feel the immediate connection with all things. Through the Brahma Vihara practices we did with U Pandita, that it just the visceral sense of being connected to everything in the a single metta-based thought seemed to immediately reverberate and return, like dropping a pebble in a pond and you see the waves rippling out. In the same way, the metta waves or the compassion waves moving out into the universe and immediately coming back energetically in some form, feeling that oneness, the practice of oneness. U Pandita would say this, if you want to know oneness, practice the Brahma Viharas. Understanding they are a compassion, they are a concentration practice, the compassion, loving kindness, joy, equanimity, and they're meant to be. The double benefit in practicing the Brahma Viharas as a concentration practice is you get both the purification of mind through one-pointed concentration, which temporarily sets aside all the hindrances, intrusions, inner and outer violations. And secondly, we're maturing the most powerful primal spiritual emotions there are. These Brahma Viharas into which all other emotions eventuate. That's oneness, that's the experience of oneness when we do that practice. And then it sets both the foundation and the tone by which we enter the moment-to-moment reality. When we release the one-pointed fixed concentration and attune to moment nature. If we're completely absorbed in the one-pointed practice, we can't see, we can't sense, we can't feel, we can't know the pulsating, vibrating, visceral reality of moment-to-moment transitory nature. So the way this is traditionally practiced is if one is inclined, do a period of the Brahma Viharas, resolving beforehand to come out of the absorption, watch the dissolution of that absorbed, concentrated state, and then attune to nature as it arises, sensations and thoughts and sounds, attuning to phenomena, just the nature of phenomena. That's the wisdom practice. It's the truth that liberates. So here we combine in various ways both the Brahma Vihara and wisdom practice to be of benefit because we all have a different nature and we're all different at different times. There were times when I came to practice Brahma Viharas with U Pandita and it wouldn't work, it wouldn't take, I couldn't do it. And U Pandita said the Satipatthana Vipassana, the wisdom practice is calling you. You have to go with that. It's beyond my control. Just pulled toward the wisdom practice. Later, of course, other retreats. I could again do an integrated practice, Brahma Vihara and Vipassana, interwoven or back and forth. But listening to the call of the Dhamma within ourselves is critical, is essential, and is itself an aspect of our training in the path of transformation and the path of transcendence. when we're called to the path of transcendence, it's like there's just no choice. We have to do it. That's where we source the wisdom that empowers us as better human beings in the work of the path of transformation. More pure generosity, loving kindness, service, relations with all whom we relate to, our friends, family, our pets, from whom, for many of you, it's powerful Brahmavihara subject. You give and you receive so much from your cat or your dog, and it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Both metta and equanimity can be practiced either with a living being or a place that pulls out that kindness, that connection of metta, and a place that creates the sense of stability, mental equipoise, equanimity, as you are probably discovering in your meditative home or room where you are right now. Our work, our play, everything we do to be healthy, to help others in our reach be healthy, improve our ways of relating through speech and listening, our honest self-assessment, correcting error when we make a mistake or even think we make a mistake. It's a beautiful thing, forgiveness, self-forgiveness, or asking for forgiveness. It's inherent in all the Brahma Viharas, in that Brahma Vihara heart. To forgive and be forgiven. Forgive ourselves, forgive others, ask for forgiveness. That's a critical part of the work of self-transformation. Just to encourage you to continue relating, getting to know your physical space, your garden, your room, just where you are. It's all supporting you. You can extend metta to everything in your home, everything in your room, everything around you. And you can feel its support in that equanimous grounding, anchoring. So the way you look around, the way you gaze, the way you relate to your things, your property, skill in having, skill in using, all contributes to our path of transformation. And then as we feel the strength of our healthy sense of selves and begin to feel the selfless nature there, it's just an effortless transition to understanding and realizing our path of transcendence, which is our wisdom practice beyond personality. So we go beyond the personal. We go beyond in-breath and out-breath. We go beyond life and death. That's what the path of transcendence is about. The mystery of life often brings us to a practice, a deep inner practice, because there's some sense, is there something more than life and death? Is there something more than this body and its term? It's born and it ages and it decays and it dissolves, goes away. The powerful inspiration for looking for the desire to understanding, for Dhamma, a healthy Dhamma desire to want to know, to understand. It doesn't take long to where we have a sense of the life and death of each moment as we relax, and that soft readiness of awareness, just that attunes to even momentary series of sensations within the breath, or the flickering of light within the awareness of seeing, the change of timbre and tone, sound vibrations, a series of thought formations that then abruptly ends, disappears into nothingness. Those initial early insights into the changing nature, the life and death of moments, that experience itself is defined by its momentariness. That experience and knowing are the same thing. There's no knowing without experience. There's no experience without knowing. So in terms of Quinn's question this morning about being aware of knowing, but then everything disappearing so quickly, it seemed like there's no time, or hard to hold on to a sense of knowing. Well, that itself is insight. That is insight awareness, where there's a moment of knowing that itself is experienced as dissolving. It's a very liberating moment. It's a very powerful moment. There's no need or reason to look for a handle. Well, how do I know that? That's the whole point. It's to attune so deeply to that truth of impermanence, anicca, that even knowing isn't something to stand on or to hold on to. So the Buddha's passing, reading about the Buddha's passing, I experienced something very similar in 1982 in Rangoon at the Mahasi Center. It was the year Mahasi passed away. And that's like a combination of an earthquake and a powerful, extremely sacred period. I couldn't help but be kind of shaken to the core walking through the monastery, the Mahasi monastery, and all the monks and nuns were in various halls, the nuns' hall, the monks' hall, the layperson's hall, chanting the Sutta of Impermanence on behalf of Mahasi. And pictured in the front, was Mahasi in his long career of teaching, having ordained, as did U Pandita, when they were children, monks for life, and reputedly very awakened, if not completely awakened. The Buddha's last words were, to be an island unto yourself, to take refuge in the Dhamma after his passing, and then how all things are transient. Do what you need to do with diligence for awakening. So that understanding, so liberating in such a sacred moment that someone like an awakened being, or even someone who is deep degrees of awakening, would use their own death to teach that sacred moment of everything. Whatever arises has the nature to pass away. All conditioned phenomena are impermanent. And to make suttas, discourses, and chants that are 2,600 years old, that are inspiring when a great being passes away, and teach us this path of transcendence. That we don't take death as some kind of finality, because we're practicing this moment-to-moment awareness to see beyond that duality, beyond the dualities. So we make these shelters of rest. We wake up, just rest, relaxation, so that we can attune to the nature of impermanence, the reality that is before us moment to moment, so inherent, so immediate, and so intimate that even that which is observing, the knowing mind, is itself subject to dissolution, immediate dissolution. It's just so quickly arising, it gives the illusion that it's an ongoing awareness. There is no such thing. There is no ongoing awareness. Knowing only arises because conditions come together, as Michelle was saying yesterday. Striker receptor, ignition, light particles, inner sensitivity of the eye, that moment of contact, seeing consciousness. Sound vibrations, inner sensitivity of the ear, that contact moment, hearing consciousness. No consciousness without that contact. The elemental nature of the body, earth, water, fire, air. The largest organ, which is our body, in touch with the elemental nature, textures and temperature, pressures, vibrations. Touch consciousness, tactile consciousness, how the body feels itself. Those conditions aren't there, that doesn't happen. There are other qualities that have to be there too. There has to be some degree of attention. There has to be some degree of concentration. There has to be intention. If you take away those basics, it doesn't happen. We don't see, we don't hear, we don't feel tactile body sensation. We don't think or emote. So as we attune, as we feel the protection of that seclusion, of rest, the shelter of relaxation, and we attune to impermanence by degrees, we feel and sense and directly have luminous insight into this conditionality. There's no awareness, there's no knowing without those conditions coming together. And it's so constant, it's so incessant, we could say, that at times it's overwhelming. It's like we grow more raw, more vulnerable, more sensitive, and we feel the imprint of light, sound, sensation, all the senses being so momentarily filled with things and falling away. It's like we're just living a waterfall. as if we are a waterfall continually plunging over the cliff and down into nothingness. And that can be shaky. And that's why we work a lot on stability and integration. That's why we use the Brahma Viharas so much. That's why we find refuge in how we back off, give space to, turn our attention to other things. We don't need to force ourselves. When we feel a tipping point, that's where we use wise reflection or that clear comprehension of purpose. Should I be doing this? Clear comprehension of suitability. Is this the right timing? You know, should I take a breath? At the tipping point, one good place that we might turn to a Brahma Vihara for support, for stability, rather than just randomly, at will, at whim and wish. That's a wise action at that point. That's wise consideration to do it at that point. As we grow in our stabilizing process, we learn how to use that moment where we feel the constant imprint to grow the wisdom of disenchantment. Previously, pleasant sights, sounds, sensations, thoughts, imagination, fragrances, flavors draw us into kind of the next moment, and then the next moment, moment after moment, life after life, attachment after attachment. Even as our attachments get whittled down more, still there can be subtle craving even to the inner pleasures, the Dhamma pleasures that don't depend on pleasant sense experience. Still can be the subtle cravings. So it's an important moment when we move from anicca insights into impermanent nature and all its permutations, to this skillful dispassion. If you think of passion in the sense of, not things that we are good at and love to do, but in the sense of this constant current of wanting more, of being drawn out, of being enchanted with the colors, the beautiful colors and sounds and sensations, then even a nano moment of dispassion or disenchantment is such a powerful, spacious sense of release, relaxation, opening. In a retreat with U Pandita in the early 80s that Michelle was speaking of yesterday, it came a place after a couple of months where everything just seemed to be pleasant. Sights, sounds, sensations, emotions. The experience was just really very pleasant, blissful. So I would be reporting this to Sayadaw. And after a few days of that, he gave me another practice. And that practice was of those 4 foundations of mindfulness, to resolve to be entirely immersed in the awareness of feeling tone, Vedana. Just watch moment to moment, because that's another one of those universals that accompany a moment of knowing, a moment of consciousness, perception, feeling tone, intention, attention, concentration, along with the coming together of conditions like light and eye, and sound and ear, for there to be seeing, hearing, feeling, and so forth. So I did that. I made that resolve for 4 days or something like that, may I only be aware of the Vedana, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feeling tone, moment to moment. So at first it was still really interesting. It was still really, really pleasant. It seemed to even amplify those pleasant moments. Mentally pleasant, physically pleasant, visually pleasant, so forth. And because of the resolve, I don't remember, probably I had to retake the resolve at times. I just stayed with it. Like primarily 80 or 90% of my focus of awareness or knowing awareness was the attunement to bodily or mental, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feeling tone. A point came where I didn't know it at the time, but it was this dispassion, this disenchantment, the wisdom of disenchantment, the wisdom of not chasing for those even subtle pleasures, non-sensual inner pleasures of letting go. It wasn't like then it became unpleasant or morbid or even normal. It was just very different. It was like suddenly feeling sober after, a lifetime of enchantment, of being drawn into the world of colors and sounds and sensations and beauty and so forth. That's when I first began to understand this viraga, it's called viraga, dispassion. Raga is passion. The like the vipassana, viraga, the nature, passion, nature as experienced as overwhelm, as disenchantment, as dispassion. There's an inner freedom when that attachment is released. That inner freedom of non-attachment, non-identification. That quality of selflessness, where we're not self-referencing experience, even subtly going after, wanting. We all want that every time we meditate. It's a part of us who leans into that peaceful samadhi, concentrated ease, and the degrees of gladness, joy, and happiness that occur naturally. They're Dhamma qualities. They lead to liberation. In and of themselves, they're necessary steps on the path. The craving is extra. The wanting them to stay or the fear that they're going to go away is extra. It's the reactive mind that we're not seeing at the moment. Not enough of that profound equanimity that's so unconditionally non-reactive. What follows from the disenchantment, this passion, the experience, profound experience of endings. Impermanence implies whatever arises passes away. Sometimes we might be more aware of the whole sequence, arising, existing, passing, or the arising, existing. With this Nirodha experience, cessation experience, the awareness is attuned primarily to the dissolution. Like, if awareness is that smooth lip at the tip of the waterfall, It's an awareness of all phenomena falling away into nothingness. It's a metaphor for the cessation experience. It's utter disappearance. Sometimes we get kind of stuck in that dissolution. It can be scary. It's still an insight. And experienced teachers guide us through that and help create the stability and how to pull back or how to incrementally move through that. The full aware experience of it is it's a complete sense of opening, a complete sense of the end of craving, and therefore that relaxation that comes when we're no longer, intense or tensed for the next moment in some way because we want it or because we don't want it to go away. But it's a kind of mental tension. It's a craving that's never satiated, never satisfied. So that's what we're seeing disappear here with cessation. It's a cycle of craving and the resulting dukkha or stress, anxiety that comes because of impermanence. Well, here, the series of insights I'm talking about are how we're liberated from that process, and the cessation experience itself is a light-filled opening, a lifting, a relinquishment. We're relinquishing attachment in order for the peace that's there. We didn't need to seek peace through pure concentration practice. We can do it that way, but then it always depends on keeping concentrated. That's a difference. Here it's the wisdom of seeing the disappearance, the cessation, and the relinquishment of all forms of attachment and wanting, craving, clinging. And what's there is ease, contentment, peace. So impermanence, attuning to impermanence from the shelter of our rest, our relaxation. The dispassion, the skillful dispassion, disenchantment, recognizing how incessantly phenomena enters our sense doors, and in that contact, there's seeing, hearing, sensing, imagining, and so forth. Liking it, wanting what's pleasant, not wanting what's unpleasant, but seeing through that. Thus the dispassion, seeing through that allurement, and then a deep opening of understanding of the dissolution, the immediacy with which phenomena are dropping away, and how then the heart, by its nature, lets go. Then there's the experience, vasoga, of this utter release from that hold, that previous habit. It's a liberating moment. We do this again and again, and we have more and more of those liberating moments in degrees of less and less attachment, degrees of more and more release, more and more peace. At a certain point, as we saw with our elders, teachers in Asia, Burma in particular, there is a final kind of cessation and release that results in the relinquishment of all greed, hatred, and delusion. And because along the way we have those little releases, our confidence grows, our trust grows that that is so. Because we have these little mini cessation experiences, and the liberation is so profound, and like the purest, deepest Brahma Viharas, so feels at home. It feels so much like this is who I am, what life is, what I'm here for, not in a self-centered way, not in a egoic building way. Because here we have these two paths that protect each other. The path of transformation that creates this goodness, that brings out this goodness of our being, of our body and our mind, in our generosity, loving kindness, and interrelationships and so forth. What we do, what we manifest in the world. And then how the stronger we are as this person connected to our goodness, the more that transcendent path opens up to us. And the transcendent path are these moments of liberating insight that in turn nurture and strengthen the path of transformation, our work in the world, our work on ourselves and our health and our well-being and the well-being of others and so forth. And they're parallel paths. They each feed each other. They're each necessary for each other. It's hard work building a true human being. U Pandita loved to talk about what it meant to be a true human being. We're fortunate to be recipients, vehicles, vessels, containers for this lineage, thousands of years old, and grateful. We stand on the shoulders of our predecessors. U Pandita always began retreats by offering gratitude to his teacher, who was Mahasi Sayadaw, and Mahasi's teacher, the Mingun Sayadaw, and Mingun Sayadaw's teacher, all so on and so forth, all the nuns and monks and lay teachers back to the time of the Buddha. And so there was this sense of passing on this generosity, these kindnesses, these wisdom teachings, and that now we're receiving them and we're responsible for them. And we're holding up a lot of the world that's so vulnerable, so shaky, so uncertain, so anxious now. There's no one else to do it except those of us who have enough of a sense of this practice being our lives and made our life our practice, and our practices our life, that we have no idea how much we're helping others. We have no idea how much this permeates out into our immediate and further environment, the planet, to keep it stable. So it's hard not to have a trust, a faith, a healthy sense of hope, to come through this teaching, this very vulnerable time on the planet, because of the force of these practices. They're based in a wisdom of such antiquity that they said had such a force to still be arriving like a rolling wheel, or like waves here and now and today. All dhammas, all phenomena are transient, except one, and that is nibbana. We're fortunate to have little momentary nibbana moments, as Sayadaw U Pandita would encourage us to have, and with this strength of faith and trust that there are enough fully liberated people on the planet today that are supporting us in our capacity to support those who need it. Just listen right now. Just listen to our body, listen to our heart, listen to our own wisdom. Appreciating these paths of transformation and transcendence. Continuing with the meditative insights that we cultivate, develop, and then applying our wisdom, applying our compassion every day, every moment. Please be steadfast and relaxed in whatever practice you do between now and the chanting.